combine small town roots with business savvy, and you've got the Rural Rundown podcast. We're sharing our marketing and branding strategies, tips, and tricks that rural businesses can use to educate, inspire, and entertain their customers, and to help you make sales and hit profit goals. So what does it take to go from your mom is your only fan to famous in a small town? Tune in and listen up as we feature business owners and organizations that are doing big things in their community and creating opportunities for generations to come.
Hey, it's another episode of the Rural Rundown podcast. We're talking with Sean, Brian, and Matt from Next Level Ag Solutions. Hey guys, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
So first off, Rachel and I just want to start. Rachel knows you guys. You guys all live in West Central Minnesota, but I don't. So just tell me a little bit about what Next Level is.
You. Okay. Next Level Ag, we started business 5 years ago with the goal in mind to help guys in this area get to obviously the next level in what they were doing with their precision ag equipment. And to make that work and to be able to do more than just that, we paired seed sales and liquid fertilizer with that to kind of make a full business portfolio and a full service center for farmers in this area. So that was the goal that we set off with at that time.
And how did the three of you come to work together?
Sean and I are brothers, and we farm. We're part of a family farm in West Central Minnesota, and Brian was working at a local dealership doing precision ag stuff, services, and I got to know Brian pretty well because he was working on my equipment, and we got to the point where I was like, he's telling me how he's miserable at his job, and I'm like, we should do this together. And that's kind of how it started. And we had an office space available on our farm that we could use. So the three of us came up with a business plan, and it kind of modified from there, and here we are. So,
and I was still in college at the time, and so when we had, talked about me coming back to farm, Matt and my dad and we had talked about how we need to probably diversify and find different things that we can do, so the farm doesn't have to supplement all three of us. So it would kind of worked well for me coming back and for Matt as well.
So a little bit of what I'm hearing is that you guys kind of started your business to serve people who are living the same life you're living. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, and I think it was Brian was on one side of the coin, and he was providing all these services to people, and I was on the other side as a farmer producer going, why don't you offer this? Why doesn't the company offer this? And he's like, well, we don't have time. So it was nice because we were on both sides of the marketplace, so we could kind of fine tune and go on a different path of what everyone else was doing. And it's really worked for us. It's kind of a little niche thing we have going, and we've been able to capitalize on that. I think as a farmer producer, there were a lot of other people like me that wanted the same things. And then that's kind of where we steered and what we provided, which basically springboarded us to be where we're at. So,
right. There's something about having a service with precision ag to keep you in contact with guys rather than being just another seed guy or just another fertility guy, where you know exactly what he wants every time he calls you. It's to get a sale of some sort, where it keeps the conversation going and lightens the mood, I would say, for that to be a possibility later on in the year. So it's just makes a deeper relationship rather than just buyer seller. We're actually helping them, trying to help their farm be more productive and more efficient.
So tell me a little bit more about the customers you kind of serve. Since you came from, working under a company to starting your own business, do some of those customers overlap, or are you creating a brand new customer base? What did that look like when you first started?
Yeah, there was some of both situations there. Like we say, we've got three different pillars going on, and if we can get a customer to trust us enough to get at least two of those three pillars, then I think we're moving in the right direction. And it started obviously with people that I had already worked with at the last job, trying not to just go after my former employer in any way, but the guys that I knew were longing for the things that we were offering, give them the phone call and let them know what we're up to. And then it just kind of grew from there. And then with seed, you started to develop new relationships in different areas we didn't have before. And then you just try not to piss anybody off, for lack of a better term, and then hope that it leads to everything else.
That's interesting. I think we're like diving a little bit into the marketing side of the business. So Rach, anytime you want to like chime in with anything you've got to add, but how do you get people to that point? Like you said, you have the 3 pillars. So how do you kind of gain their trust and get them to that point where they're ready to attack all 3 pillars?
I think probably one of our biggest tools is that our farm itself was using these products or services, so we could actually show, a lot of these companies, to step back, a lot of these companies show you a plot or a segment of data that is done somewhere where you're not familiar with it, so you don't really trust it, where we could show them stuff like, hey, this happened on this field, and these customers in this area know where that is, and they know us, and they're like, well, they're using it. I think if they're using it and they can show me this data, I trust it enough to try it myself. It's not that they just trust it and do it on a massive scale, but it gives them enough confidence to dabble in it. And I think that with just basically word of mouth, you get, when you're dealing with a lot of farm egg producers, it's like every year there's less producers. Like 50 years ago, there were a ton more farmers than there are now. And we're very interconnected compared to what we used to be. So it's like you go from a point where everyone was kind of on their own. Now there's data just all over the place. So if you can get 2 or 3 people to latch onto it, and they all have the capability to make their own data set, and they're all doing that because that's what they use to make their next year's decision. All we need is someone to share that with one of their friends or a uncle or a cousin or whatever. Hey, I did this from these guys. That's helped us big, just being on the same level. We're not selling them something that we're not using. We're selling them something that we're using also.
I feel like that's huge for you guys. I mean, like they can drive by your field and literally check it out if they want to know. You kind of touched on it, but what would you say has been one of the biggest challenges of growing the business, marketing yourself past couple of years?
Well, I would say we're pretty progressive people in general, and we know that social media was probably our best way to expand outside of this immediate area, and we were terrible at running our social media.
We always told ourselves we needed to make it a priority, and we did make it
a priority
because we hired somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how we made it a priority.
And I wasn't leading you guys. I'm just saying that.
But we just knew, like, it was to a point where we were like, we're going to do this. We're going to make a schedule. We're going to post this and that. And we'd have all these great ideas, and then we'd get in the thick of things, and we're all busy, and it's just like, well, and 2 months went by, we never even put anything.
You'd be months without having anything out. Yeah.
And we finally all just sat down, and it was like, it's first part of having a problem is admitting that you have one. I'm like, okay, we need help. This is where we need to go. We need this to be able to expand, and we need help.
And it's cool because you have a lot of people who stop in and say, oh, I saw this on Facebook, or I saw this, wherever. And
we don't want to get like Rachel, get a big head here.
but you can tell that it's definitely made a difference, I think, from the people I talk to.
Yeah, I've had a lot of comments like, who puts your stuff on, and I thought, no one's ever going to know. I should take credit for this. But I give the credit for Rachel.
Oh, yeah, I feel like that you guys aren't alone. Like business owners have so many hats to wear and social media marketing is a priority, but it gets easily, I think, pushed aside because you have the other things that feel more, they probably feel and are a little more important at the time. So yeah,
everything moves
at home at night and you're just tired, you don't want to look at a screen, you don't want to look at anything else, just leave me alone.
Yep.
Yeah, there's many parts of our business where we see the needle moving, but social media isn't always the one that we can pinpoint to be like, oh yeah, that is like pushing our business forward or bringing us new customers or things like that. I'm really interested in kind of like your family background and being an entrepreneur and starting a business. I think for some people that's kind of like way out of the norm. They're like, well, I could never, you know, work for myself or not have health benefits or not have this, that, or the other thing. But I think sometimes if we see other people, like our parents or somebody in that role, then it kind of trickles down. My dad was a farmer. My grandparents were both farmers. You know, I lived on the farm that my family homesteaded. So I've always seen people basically running their own day. So I'm curious to ask you guys the same thing. Did you have people like that in your life that kind of showed you like, hey, you can work for yourself?
Me first? Okay. Yeah, I would say I believe it's kind of in your blood to a certain extent. It can be a hard leap to make when you're used to making a decent living, because that's where I was at. We had 3 kids, and working a pretty safe job. It wasn't going to go away, and if I didn't do anything wrong, I wasn't going to get fired, and it was very comfortable. You made a paycheck, you made your living, and you had very good benefits, things like that. So it was a little bit harder for me to jump off at that point. But like I say, it's kind of in my blood too, because most of my family members on my father's side and my mom's too are in that sort of thing. But they're not all farming, but they're running a business of some sort on their own and making their own ways. So you kind of see that your whole life, and really, you kind of desire that, but at the same time, you see the stresses of it too. So it may shy you away. But I think the one person that pushed me over the edge was actually these guys' dad. He told me one day when we were kind of talking about this in the break room, he said, well, you can either work for the man or you can be the freaking man. And I think that was one of the things that kind of resonated for me when we were doing that, to have the final push to actually make something happen.
And I think, I've told Brian this many times, he was the one that took the leap of faith. Like we all went into business, but we weren't leaving our jobs. This was something that we could do and still farm. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't risky for us. He was quitting a really good job to start up something that we had put a lot of homework into it. We thought, well, we can make this work, but you don't really know until you try it. And he told me, and I'm like, I don't know if most people would do that. And I think if you asked him, it was like probably one of the best moves he's ever made.
At the time, you were a little nervous.
Even though some days he wants to kill us, but I think on our end, like, all we knew was our parents farmed, and
our grandpa did a lot of stuff too.
Yeah, and he was in grain construction.
Had a pretzel factory.
Started a pretzel factory. So I mean, it's in our blood too, I think. And then like watching our parents, yeah, they worked a lot farming, but other than when you seasonally didn't have a choice, they had flexibility and they got to do things with us or coach our basketball teams, or they had a different lifestyle than most people have. And yeah, sometimes they didn't get to see our football games because we've been working in the field. But it was just a different lifestyle, and they got to be their own boss. And yeah. I remember when I was right out of college and I was working on a planner or something in the shop, and my dad and I were arguing, and he just looked at me and he said, "You were never put on this earth to work for somebody else." And I didn't know at the time if that was like a compliment or like he was really after me. But I think some people just want to do their own thing.
That's how we kind of are.
Yeah. Well, I see that in all 3 of you. Like, I feel like when you meet somebody who's entrepreneurial, you like can see their wheels moving in their brain, and you know, like you're all probably working on 3 different businesses in your brain right now, thinking about when to start them, when to do them. So one of the questions I have, I think, with our podcast, we're kind of highlighting rural businesses. You can be successful living in a rural place.
Yeah.
Do you think, so my question is, for entrepreneurs, do you think there's an advantage to being in a rural setting, or it's a disadvantage?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of it's probably both sides of that coin, but I think a little bit is like there's competition here, but it's spread out a little bit more. It's like we're in a town of 1,500 people. There's not 5 of us. If you move to the cities, you have to be really good at what you're doing. And I'm not saying we don't have to be good because we're in competition with whoever, but it just seems like there's maybe a little bit more space to navigate that kind of stuff that way a little bit. But it depends on what you're doing too, obviously.
Yeah, right.
How many people? I mean, we're going after 2% of the population. Now, if we're trying to sell something that we're going after 50% of the population, that's a whole different ballgame.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Personality plays a lot into that, because when you're dealing with such a small percentage of the population, if you're wronging someone or you're not sticking to your word on something, that word's going to get around just as quickly as, actually, that's going to get around quicker than anything good you do. So you got to be,
your reputation can be ruined really fast in a small, I feel, in a rural area. But I also think if you do a really good job and you treat people well, you get the reputation pretty quick too. So, but it's easy to wreck that. So you have to be really careful. And we've always kind of lived by that. We just need to treat people right and make sure we make it right at the end of the day. Because not everything is always going to be perfect no matter what, but we're just going to make sure that we take care of the customer, because we need them. There's not a million more customers here. So we have X amount of customers in this area and we need all of them. So we have to take care of them like crazy.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of hometown support? I grew up in a town of 800 people, and that like hometown pride and sticking with people in your local community who are doing business with them is kind of like something to pride yourself on. Do you guys see a lot of that where you're at?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are a lot of people that are pretty loyal and they will just, no matter what, try to buy local. And there are some people that don't care. I know that we've tried to do a lot of stuff in the community, in the schools, in the churches, just to try to, we do that stuff because we have kids that go to the schools and we go to the churches. That's one reason. And another reason is to show people that we're part of the community too.
Right.
Mhm.
We're going to the same places you're going. Like if you spend it here, we're going to show you that we'll get back to the things that you care about. And I think that's helped us. But yeah, I definitely think that that's a thing here versus if you go to a big city, for sure. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Even when, around here with the people who aren't doing business with us, the people who aren't involved in agriculture, they're always asking how it's going and they're excited about it, which I think is really cool to see, because they might not deal with us, with any of the stuff we sell, or they might not even be in agriculture at all, but they still think it's cool that we have this going and we started this. And
rural America is dying. Not dying, but changing, evolving over the last how many years. And all these towns are, so when people decide that they're going to stay here and start a business that isn't already here, it's exciting for more people than just people that do business with them. It's like, there's people in town that have nothing to do really with farming that are excited that we're here because it's 3 families or 4 families or 5 families that you end up supporting, and then we buy stuff, buy supplies locally or whatever. So it's just, you just become part of the economy in that area.
Yeah. Inserts like life opportunity, not only now for you, but for your kids or their kids.
When I think rural area too, we think that way more, like about our kids,
the next generation. Yeah.
And I know a lot of people aren't like that, and people think we're weird, especially farmers are super weird that way. We'll do stuff for like 2 generations down the road and people are like, are you nuts? But that's the way we are. And someone did it for us so I think we always talk about that. We have no idea where this place will go. We hope it's here 50 years from now. We have no idea who will be running it. Maybe it'll be someone else outside of our families, or maybe it will be one of our kids, or a combination of them. But you think about that as you go, I think.
Absolutely. Like we've heard a lot last year with pandemic and all this other stuff, we're all in this together, so we're all tied together. So you just do all you can to support your own community.
What would you say is special about your area, or even just the West Central Minnesota region? Special about living there, special about running a business there?
For me personally, it's hard to, I grew up loving Minnesota, thinking we were the greatest thing ever. This last year has really kind of taken that down a couple of notches. Right. I would rather consider myself East Dakota, but it's different out here than what most people probably think or hear about Minnesota lately, but I do love it out here. There's if I look at my home specifically, it's a mile till my next neighbor, or half a mile to my next neighbor, and just cropland and streams and trees. It's just a beautiful area, and live and work here is just an absolute gift. You can go into a lot of different political stuff beyond that and cite the struggles of having a business in Minnesota where, you know, right next door, you know, the tax benefits are better, but you know, you get that love for your hometown as you grow there, and your roots run deep. So no matter what, you're just going to try to keep making it work.
And I think the people that we work with, most people that we work with, all kind of have a common, like they work hard and they're trying to build something. Mm-hmm. So you feel like you're speaking their language when you talk to them for the most part. So that part's kind of fun, and you get to see how everyone plans different things or how they have different goals. And I think when they say Minnesota nice, I really do think that exists. Like most people around here care about their neighbor. They might not be best friends with everybody, but if something happens, they're going to be, you know, I've seen tons of times in the farming community where someone's dad or grandpa will get sick or pass away or something mid harvest season or something. They don't ask for any money. They don't even, all of a sudden there'll be 10 people there to help them harvest their crop. I just don't know if other areas of the country or world, that's like a common thing. And I know it happens other places, but it's like, it happens every time here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, yeah, you might have disagreements with somebody. You might not see eye to eye with somebody, because we're all competitors at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, too, you're going to be the first person there to help them, because you would want that for you. And I think that's cool.
Great.
Yeah. This is kind of a fun question. I want to pick your guys' brain. So it's two-part. One for you guys, one for you. But so Sean and Matt are brothers. I want to know what it's like working together as brothers. And then I want Brian to answer the question, what it's like working with two brothers.
Who gets to go first on this?
Well,
I'll let Sean.
We see, you know, the overall vision that Matt and I have is very similar. But I think, you know, there's little things that we think could be done differently, or you know, we might see it differently. But I think and I think Brian can say this, we're pretty good about not really bottling anything up. So we will talk about it, and it might not be like the prettiest talk, but we at least talk about it, and we get on the same page eventually, you know. And I don't know.
Well, we might not get on the same page. We might flip it and just start a new page.
Right.
We at least come.
But I think there's a lot of people who don't, you know, you don't address something and then it just bottles up over time. And we're really not like that. We kind of get everything out in the open. And
we're pretty.
If I think he's being an idiot, I'm not afraid to tell him that, and he's not afraid to tell me that either.
We're pretty transparent, and I just remember when we started working together. I mean, this area in general is a very conservative area. People they bottle up their emotions. They don't wear their emotions on their sleeve very easily. And I think when Brian started working with us, he was like, what on earth did I get myself into here? Because we would argue about stuff, and he'd be like, you guys are crazy. You get mad. And then 20 minutes later, you're laughing and joking. I'm like, well, we just don't ever keep anything inside.
Right.
And I think that we'll get along forever because we're like that. Yeah. And I'm not saying that it's always awesome to work with your brother. Sometimes he wants to kill me. Sometimes I want to kill him. But for the most part, we get along great. And I would rather do it with him than by myself, especially farming. So it's been good, wouldn't you say?
Huh? Yeah, it's been pretty good.
So Brian, we could see what Brian says.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what they said. That's one of the things that when I started to get to know the Condon family, working with them at my previous job, it was something you could see right away. Like, they don't mince words. Everything is the truth, what they're going to tell you. Nothing is hidden. So that was an honesty level that I've never seen in my life before working with these guys. I know brothers and sisters that haven't talked to each other for over 40 years. That's the, you don't want to call it a heritage, but that's some of the characteristic of the area that I grew up just east of here, where you don't want to offend anybody. You don't want to say anything mean. So you just don't say it. And if you never address certain issues, you'll never get past them. So that was something, when I got to know these guys, it was like, man, it's something I've never seen before. And it really was, something where people ask me all the time, or used to ask me all the time, how did you ever get to know them? And why are you working with them? It's like, well, I know what they're telling me is the truth. And I know that there's not going to be issues, because we've had plenty of uncomfortable conversations over the years when we had to deal with stuff, and you never lose sleep that night because you leave the place and it's taken care of, and you're on to, Matt said, a new page and on to the next chapter.
Don't you think that it's been huge for our business, Next Level Ag, that we can just sit in a room and we can deal with it?
Absolutely.
And if we couldn't do that, I just don't know how you make that work. And then that's going to fall down to your customers.
Right.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, it's not rosy all the time. Nothing is. If you think it is, you're in la la land, or either that or you have really good luck. But it's not. Right. And we can sit down and just get to the bottom of it.
Yep.
And let's fix this.
There's no sugarcoating anything around here. We kind of just get it out and try and get issues solved as quickly as.
But like, with that being said, we don't just come in here and yell at each other. Let's sit down and let's come up with a plan. Like, I think this is going to work. And then the other person say, well, I don't think it's going to work, and this is why. And we don't just leave the room and get mad and don't talk to each other. We sit there and figure it out.
Here's an example of a conversation I heard between these two not 2 weeks ago. Something that could have been uncomfortable, something that could have been bottled up, but wasn't. Matt says to Sean, I love you no matter what. I will always love you. Nothing's ever going to change that. But don't ever do this again.
What was that again?
Okay, and then we move on. Those are the types of conversations that need to happen a lot more.
I can't remember what I did. Yeah, it wasn't even that big of a deal.
I can't remember.
He unloaded, I'm not trying to dig up the past here, but he unloaded seed and stuck it in the middle of the shed.
That's right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I'm like, just finish the job, man.
Yeah.
Well, I had the reasoning for that, but it's fine. See, here we go. This is what happened.
He is the warehouse manager.
Yeah.
Just stay in your own lane.
There was a reason for it.
Dribble it into my warehouse.
Well, what do you see being next for Next Level Ag Solutions, or even the industry in general?
Good question. Sometimes we don't always know what's next, but we always try to, whether it's reading publications or just looking through other social media, to try to keep our finger on the pulse of what may be coming, or at least be aware of new products out there if it's something that we think can help our customers. We'll never say no, but we're going to do our due diligence before we bring anything in. So
like Matt said, I think we're pretty progressive. And so if there's a new product that, is going to be the next big thing, we're pretty good about trying it and getting it on some acres and seeing what it's going to do before we just turn around and try and sell it without even having any data or any trials on stuff. So
yeah, and we've tried a lot of stuff, a lot of different products, or even maybe some practices, and we have a group of customers that will absolutely they want to be part of the trial. And so we do it, and there's been a lot of times we're like, you know what, this is not going to work here. It might work in Nebraska or Iowa, but it's not going to work in West Central Minnesota. Or we might try something and go, well, this is what we saw, and then we go forward selling it. But I think in our industry, and probably the case for a lot of industries, we have to be like super nimble. We have to be able to move quickly to whatever's going to be the next avenue, and at the same time, make sure we're listening to our customers at what they want and trying to bridge the gap between those two things. And I think we've been able to do that so far. And so we're kind of just trying to navigate the waters, I guess, and give our customers what they want.
Right. Sometimes it's tempting, as on our side of the business, we get people stopping in and say, this is going to be great, and look at the margin you're going to make. A lot of times we found out some of the highest margin products don't work. So, it's going through, like Matt said, the due diligence of getting the data, getting widespread data within the core customers that we trust the most and work with us pretty transparently. That way we can get the quickest data and actually know if it's going to pay off for the rest of the guys we work with too.
And I think when we've become so intertwined with everybody's operations, that when they start to trust you, the worst thing you can do is sell them a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't work.
Right.
So we try to make sure that it does work, or in certain cases it works. And that's how we try to advertise it. Like, if you do this will pay you back. Because I think if we just try to sell everything and make margin and don't care about what the end result is, we only sell it for a year, and then those guys, well, they're just going to sell you a bunch of stuff that doesn't work. We don't want to have that reputation. So we have to be careful with that kind of stuff too.
Is there anything, any product or any practice right now in the industry that you guys are just like really excited about and excited for new people to learn about?
Well, I think we have a product we sell. It's called Pivot Bio, proven, and it's basically a product that's going to help you use your own fertility, what's existing in your ground, more efficiently. And I think that it's maybe not exciting for us, because I think we're just realizing that over time the government is going to be more regulatory on how much fertilizer we can apply on farms. And so we have to try to find out how to get the most out of what's already there so that we can apply less. And everyone has the same concern, and we all know what's coming. So it's like we're all trying to find the best way to do it. So I think for us, that's an exciting product, because there's a lot of good data on it. There's a lot of university studies on it. And so we're really rolling out a pretty extensive trial this year with a lot of acres to try to figure out, hey, does this work? And I think if it works, it's going to be a big deal, because it's going to be tied in with mandatory things that are going to happen in our industry.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a little like off the business topic, but I could be like totally off base here too, but soil health seems to be a like bigger topic in the last 5 years. And maybe it is because some of that regulatory stuff that we see coming down from government. What are other practices people can use to create better soil health, or should we be looking at doing different things like no-till practices, or, you know, what should we look into?
This is something that, how do you want to say it? A lot of guys have a lot of different ideas on, and this area specifically with our soil types, there are ways of doing different practices, but it's a lot harder because we have a lot smaller window than other places do, you know, namely Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, and that's, you know, strip till, cover crops, no till. I know guys who are doing it and doing it well, but the situation is different for those guys, and you have to be all in to make it really work well. And even then, how do I want to say it, that the cost may not be all that different than typical practices, but the struggle we've had, you know, there's a big push a couple of years ago for cover crops and using that in our immediate area, and just the weather patterns we had those couple of years, we just could not get stuff to work well around here. And one of my really good friends is doing it too, and his whole management practice is built around it, having cattle and strip till and doing a lot of no-till stuff. It's the perfect situation. But even he told me one time, he's like, without a government check to do this stuff, the ends wouldn't meet, because it doesn't always work.
And I think we're challenged more where we are. I mean, we're so far north here that we just don't, I mean, we have later springs, we have really early frosts in the fall, and it gets cold, and like cover crops are hard. I'm not saying that they're impossible here, they'll work, but we just have to learn what is going to be the best way to do it. And I think strip till is a way that might work in conjunction with that. And I think part of the other challenge in this area is we grow so many crops. You go to other parts of the country and they are growing wheat, corn, and soybeans. Well, here you're growing wheat, corn, and soybeans, edible beans,
sugar beets,
carrots, red beets, sugar beets. I mean, we have a lot of vegetable crops, and all of those things are more finicky when you start to talk about no-till or strip till. So there's so many different
variables.
Yeah, it's just, we're all trying to learn, and we're trying to crash course this thing, because we also have probably some of the heaviest soil in the United States, like heavy, dark clay. We have to put drain tile in to try to get rid of water. We don't really worry as much about drought as other parts of the country. Not saying that that can happen, but we're the opposite of Nebraska or Southern Iowa. And what works there isn't going to work here. I think we're figuring out, we're going to have to try to figure out what does work here.
Right. A lot of people are working on that, but we haven't found something that's perfect and can do it yet. The closest that we've come as a company is probably AgroLiquid, because that's their whole message. We can zone apply our fertilizer without having to do all the other steps. So we can be smart with our placement and everything and still feed the crop, but yeah, not have to reinvent the whole wheel to do it.
Sure. What is one marketing tip you guys could offer to other rural businesses?
Hire Rachel.
Hire Rachel.
Hire December Day Creative.
No, I really think though, I mean, we're not marketing experts. I think when we went to college, we had marketing classes. I talked to Rachel about this. Like, she's obviously an expert. We aren't. But I think you have to start at least with making sure people know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you can help them. And I think that we did an all right job of doing that at least. But there were still people 4 or 5 years that were like, didn't have a clue what we were doing. I'm like, how does this person not know what we're doing?
Next level? Like 2 years after we had started, you know, and it's like, well, maybe we could have done a better job at that. But
thinking about that now, I don't think I've been asked that question since we've hired someone to actually manage that part of our business. And we had spent thousands of dollars on different things, radio.
And I'm not knocking radio, because I think radio has its place. But we were, like I said earlier, we're going after such a small percentage of the population that we're spending a crazy amount of money on a radio ad that we only care if this many people see. Or hear, I mean, sorry. And it just, otherwise you don't care. I mean, you don't care if the dentist hears it. He's never going to buy anything here. So that was probably our biggest struggle, is we didn't know where the best money was.
Where you should put your money. Yeah.
Do you want to hop into some rapid fire questions, Brenna?
Yeah, I was leaving it open for you in case you had another marketing question. We do have a couple of rapid fire questions to just kind of wrap this up. So first one, I'm from Wisconsin. You guys are obviously from Minnesota, so I got to know, Vikings or Packers?
Vikings.
It's a misery. It's a lifelong misery, but Vikings.
Okay, so you have a hot bowl of chili for supper. Are you eating it with cinnamon rolls or cornbread?
Cornbread.
Cinnamon rolls.
Ooh.
Cinnamon roll.
Chili? Never heard of that in my life.
Rachel, what about you?
Lunch growing up. That's how they paired it. So
high end than me.
I don't eat either with chili. I eat chili with sour cream and cheese.
I do too.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's it. Okay. Are we your very last meal? Are you gonna eat a steak or a pork chop?
Steak.
I raised pigs, but I gotta say steak.
Would you rather work for yourself or work for somebody else?
Yourself.
Myself.
Literally, yeah.
No doubt.
Yep.
Yes. So my last question for you guys is, I listen to this sports podcast, and I'm stealing this idea from them. They ask their guests, when it comes to success, what % do you contribute luck versus hard work?
Ooh.
That's a really good question.
And let's do this in business. So for business.
Yeah.
I would say that you do need luck, because I can attest to many times in our business career where luck has played a big part in it. Yeah. But I don't think you find luck without working hard. Yeah, so I would say it's 80-20.
I was going to say 90-10.
I was going to say 80-20 as well. Yep.
Cool. How can... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rach.
Okay, how can people keep up with you going in the future?
By following our Facebook page, which Rachel has taken care of and does a really good job.
Do we have anything else?
We have Twitter too.
Pretty sure, yeah.
And Instagram, stuff. Which Rachel's basically.
You're learning a lot about our marketing.
I made a Twitter page And then I forgot we even had it, and now Rachel runs it, and it's so much better since she's been doing that. So that's good.
Thanks, guys. Also, can you guys just do a quick little promo of your podcast too?
Yeah. So Matt and I started a podcast.
Sean started a podcast called the Back 40 Podcast.
Yeah, with another really good friend of ours, and we really don't have that. There's not like a really good format. We just kind of BS. And
we don't have like a mission like you guys do. It's totally just an entertainment.
It is an entertainment thing, but we kind of did it as an excuse to just kind of hang out, once every 2 weeks and maybe have some adult beverages. But now it's turned into people actually listen to it, and it's, I don't know, they ask all the time when the next one's coming out, so it's kind of a cool thing. But
I feel like I've learned a lot from this area, being an outsider moving in just from listening to it. So
that's good.
I enjoy it. It is entertainment for sure.
I honestly can't drive anywhere without both of my boys saying, "Can we listen to the Back 40 podcast?"
So that's why I try to keep it clean.
Yeah. Because trust me, there's time for don't want to. But
there's every once in a while they'll miss a word that was said, and I'll just be like, "Okay, hopefully they don't ask about that one later." But for the most part, it's family friendly, good, clean fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having us.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Rural Rundown podcast.
Thanks for listening. You can always find us on social media at The Rural Rundown.
And if you really liked this episode, we would totally love it if you gave us a review and gave us a little rating.
It would mean so much to us. And for more small town roots and business savvy, catch us on the next one.